Fighter pilot Cole Mercer's F-16 collided with another jet at 17,000 feet over the Mojave. Now he's bleeding with a shattered femur, no beacon, and 100-degree heat baking the desert floor. His daughter's wedding is in 7 days, and he promised to walk her down the aisle. Help is 40 miles away across scorching sand. His only guide is a distant tower flashing every 30 seconds. This is one of the greatest feats of human endurance ever recorded. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and hit subscribe. Tomorrow's story will blow your mind. Cole Mercer had been flying F-16s for 20 years. He knew the pre-flight routine like his own heartbeat. That morning at Nellis Air Force Base started like any other. Coffee at 0500, briefing at 0530, wheels up by 0800, standard air combat maneuvering drills with his wingman Captain Ryan Patterson and a newer pilot, Lieutenant Morrison. They'd run these exercises hundreds of times. Cole checked his phone before heading to the briefing room. Text from Emma. Dad, final head count is 187. Did you confirm you're +1? He smiled and typed back, just me, sweetheart. Wouldn't miss it for the world. His wife, Sarah, had died 4 years ago. Cancer took her in 6 months. Emma was all he had left, 23 years old, getting married next Saturday to a good man named David Chen. Cole had already picked up his dress uniform from the cleaners, already written his father of the bride speech, already promised Emma he'd walk her down that aisle. In the briefing room, Hawk Patterson was reviewing the flight plan. Standard engagement pattern. Morrison, you're flying clean. No live ordnance, just tracking systems. Stay at Angels 15, maintain 2 miles separation during maneuvers. Morrison nodded. The kid was green but capable. 24 years old, fresh out of advanced training, eager to prove himself. Cole studied the weather report. Clear skies, visibility unlimited. Temperature at altitude, -40. Ground temperature in the Mojave, 108 degrees. Perfect flying weather. Should be a milk run, Hawk said. In and out in 90 minutes. Cole glanced at the tactical map. Their exercise area covered 100 square miles of empty desert northeast of Nellis. Nothing out there but sand, rock, and heat. He'd flown over that terrain 1,000 times. Beautiful from 30,000 feet, deadly on the ground. They walked to their aircraft at 0745. Cole did his walk-around inspection. Checked the control surfaces, the landing gear, the intake. Everything perfect. He climbed into the cockpit and ran through the startup sequence. Engines spooled up with their familiar whine. Radio check. Instruments green across the board. Emergency beacon showing active. He taxied to the runway behind Hawk's aircraft. Morrison brought up the rear. Tower cleared them for takeoff. Cole pushed the throttle forward and felt the familiar kick as 50,000 pounds of thrust launched him down the runway. Wheels up at 160 knots, climbing through 5,000 feet, banking northeast toward the exercise area. The Mojave spread out below him, endless tan desert broken by occasional ridges and dry lake beds. He could see the old flight tower they used as a navigation reference, an abandoned structure from the 50s that still had a functioning beacon. It flashed every 30 seconds like clockwork. Emma's wedding venue was somewhere down there too. She'd chosen a desert resort for the ceremony. Cole had protested the location. Too hot in July, but she loved it. Phantom 1, you're cleared to Angel 17, Tower radioed. Cole climbed to 17,000 feet and leveled off. Morrison's aircraft appeared on his right wing. Hawk pulled ahead to begin the first engagement sequence. The collision happened 90 seconds later. Cole initiated his climbing turn, pulling 4 Gs as he tracked Hawk's aircraft through the exercise. Morrison was supposed to maintain separation and observe. Cole checked his 6 o'clock. Morrison's F-16 was there, but the angle looked wrong. Too close. Coming in hot. Morrison, check your spacing, Cole radioed. No response. Cole watched Morrison's jet drift closer. The kid was fixated on his targeting computer, not watching his flight path. Basic mistake. Fatal mistake. Morrison, brake right now. Morrison looked up too late. The impact came at 400 knots. Morrison's left wing clipped Cole's tail section. The sound was like a bomb going off inside the cockpit, metal shrieking, alarms screaming. Cole's stick went dead in his hand. The F-16 pitched forward into an uncontrolled spin. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. Phantom 1 is hit. Losing altitude." The radio cut out. Electrical systems failing. Cole fought the aircraft, but it wasn't responding. Hydraulics gone. Flight controls gone. He was riding a $50 million lawn dart straight down. Training took over. His hands moved through the ejection sequence automatically. Feet in the stirrups. Head back against the seat. Left hand on the lower ejection handle. Right hand on the upper. The ground was spinning up toward him. 14,000 feet. 13,000. He had seconds to decide. Cole pulled both handles. The canopy blew off with explosive force. Wind hit him like a physical wall. Then the ejection seat fired and the world became violence. The rocket motor under his seat ignited, punching him up and out of the dying aircraft with 17 Gs of force. His left leg caught the canopy rail as he cleared the cockpit. He felt the bone snap, heard it, a crack like a tree branch breaking. The pain was instant and total. He screamed, but the wind ripped the sound away. The ejection seat fell away. His parachute deployed automatically at 10,000 feet. The opening shock jerked him hard, sending fresh agony through his shattered leg. He looked down and saw bone protruding through his flight suit, blood already soaking the fabric. Below him, his F-16 hit the desert and exploded in a fireball. Black smoke rising into the clear blue sky. Cole tried the radio. Dead. He reached for his emergency beacon and flipped the switch. The LED indicator should have turned green. It stayed dark. The impact with the canopy rail must have damaged it during ejection. No radio. No beacon. No way to call for help. He looked around trying to orient himself. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Nothing but sand and rock and scrub brush. No roads, no structures, just emptiness. Then he saw it. The old flight tower, maybe 40 miles northeast. Its beacon flashed. 30 seconds. Flash. 30 seconds. Flash. That tower had a road, a fence, buildings, people. 40 miles. Cole looked at his leg. The bone was white against the red meat of his thigh. He was losing blood fast, going into shock. The desert below was waiting, 108 degrees on the ground, no shade, no water except the single leader in his survival pack. His parachute was carrying him down toward hell. Cole steered the parachute as best he could with his good leg, trying to avoid the rockiest terrain. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through his shattered femur. He was dropping fast. 3,000 feet. 2,000. The ground rushing up. He tried to prepare for landing. Feet together, knees bent, roll on impact. But his left leg was useless. Just dead weight with bones sticking out. This was going to be bad. 1,000 feet. The heat hit him like opening an oven door. The air shimmered. Sand stretched in every direction, broken by scattered creosote bushes and patches of hardpan. 500 feet. He could see a lizard skitter across a rock. See the texture of the sand. See how utterly alone he was. Impact. His right leg took the force, but he couldn't roll properly. He went down hard on his side. The broken leg twisted. Cole screamed. The world went white with pain. He blacked out for several seconds. When awareness returned, he was lying in the sand, tangled in parachute cords. The sun was directly overhead, burning. He was already sweating through his flight suit. His mouth was dry. His leg was on fire. Move. Had to move. Cole dragged himself out from under the parachute canopy. Every inch was agony. He pulled the survival pack from the parachute harness and opened it with shaking hands. 1-liter water bottle, first aid kit, signal mirror, knife, lighter, emergency blanket, flare gun with 3 flares. He pulled out the first aid kit and tore it open. Pressure bandages, antiseptic, pain pills. He dry swallowed 4 pills even though the bottle said take 2. Then he looked at his leg. The femur had broken clean through. Compound fracture. The bone had torn through muscle and skin about 6 inches above the knee. Blood was pumping out with each heartbeat. He needed to stop the bleeding and stabilize the break or he'd die right here. Cole packed gauze around the wound and wrapped it tight with the pressure bandage. The bone was still protruding, but the bleeding slowed. He needed a splint. He looked at the parachute. The frame had rigid support stays. He pulled his knife and cut 2 stays free, each about 3 feet long. Splinting the leg would hurt, badly. He bit down on his glove and positioned the stays on either side of his thigh. Then he wrapped parachute cord around them, securing the splint. Tighter, tighter. The bone shifted and he screamed into the glove. When it was done, his leg was immobilized. Not good, but better. The bleeding had mostly stopped. He was still losing blood, still going into shock, but maybe he'd live long enough to matter. Cole checked the emergency beacon again. Still dead. He tried the radio. Nothing. No way to call for help. He looked northeast. The flight tower beacon flashed in the distance. 40 miles, maybe more. His leg was destroyed. The temperature was 108 and climbing. He had 1 liter of water. Emma's wedding was in 7 days, he'd promised. Cole started crawling. The first 100 yards took Cole 40 minutes. He used his forearms and his good leg to drag himself forward. Push with the right leg, pull with both arms, drag the splinted left leg behind. The sand burned through his flight suit. The sun hammered down. Every movement was a negotiation with pain. He stopped to rest and checked his bearing using the signal mirror. The tower beacon flashed northeast. He'd been moving in the right direction. Barely. At this pace, 40 miles would take weeks. He'd be dead in days, maybe hours. Cole unscrewed the water bottle and allowed himself 2 small sips. The water was already hot, tasted like plastic. He forced himself to cap the bottle after just 2 swallows. Had to ration. 1 liter wouldn't last long in this heat. He checked his watch. 10:30 in the morning. He'd been on the ground for an hour. The crash site was maybe 200 yards behind him. He could still see the parachute canopy, a white flag against the tan sand. Nobody was coming. Search and rescue would be looking, but they'd be searching the wrong area. His last radio transmission cut off before he could give coordinates. They'd be combing a 100-square-mile grid. He was a single human-sized object in an ocean of identical desert. The odds of visual spotting were almost zero. He had to save himself. Cole started crawling again. The technique was simple but brutal. Right leg pushes, arms pull, broken leg drags. Repeat. The splint kept the femur from moving, but every bump in the terrain sent jolts of pain through his hip. The pain pills were doing something, but not enough. After another 100 yards, he had to stop. His arms were shaking. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. He was breathing hard, heart pounding. The heat was getting worse. Had to be 110 degrees now, maybe 115. He found a scrubby creosote bush and dragged himself into its thin shadow. The shade was minimal, but better than nothing. He lay on his back and stared at the sky. No clouds, no contrails, no helicopters, just endless blue. Emma would be at work right now. She was a pediatric nurse at Sunrise Hospital in Vegas. Probably checking on patients, adjusting IVs, making kids laugh despite their fear. She had Sarah's gift for that, making people feel safe. Sarah had been terrified when the cancer came back the second time. Stage 4, inoperable. 6 months if they were lucky. Emma had held her mother's hand through every chemo session, every bad night, every moment of despair. She'd been 19 years old. Cole had promised Sarah he'd take care of Emma, walk her down the aisle when the time came, be there for the grandkids. Sarah had died believing he'd keep that promise. He wasn't going to break it now. Cole forced himself to move. The sun was climbing toward its peak. He needed to cover more ground before the worst heat arrived. He dragged himself out from under the bush and oriented northeast using the tower beacon. 39 miles to go. He started crawling. By noon, Cole had covered maybe half a mile. The pain pills had worn off, and he'd taken 4 more. The bottle said maximum 8 per day. He'd already matched that. Didn't matter. He needed to function. The terrain changed from sand to harder ground mixed with rocks. The rocks tore through the knees of his flight suit and shredded the skin underneath. But the solid surface was actually easier. Better traction, less sliding backward with each push. He found a rhythm. Push, pull, drag, breathe. Push, pull, drag, breathe. His mind went somewhere else. Not here. not in the pain. He thought about Emma's 5th birthday party. Sarah had made a unicorn cake. Emma's face when she saw it, pure joy. The memory kept him moving. The sun reached its peak. The temperature hit 113 degrees. Cole's vision started to blur. He was sweating heavily, but the sweat evaporated almost instantly in the dry air. Dangerous sign. His body was losing water faster than he could replace it. He stopped under another creosote bush. This one was slightly larger, offering maybe 2 feet of shade. He pulled out the emergency blanket and rigged it between the bush branches to create more shade. The reflective surface helped. The temperature in his makeshift shelter dropped maybe 5 degrees. Cole allowed himself 3 sips of water. The bottle was below half now. He'd been on the ground for 3 hours, and he'd consumed more than half his water. The math was ugly. At this rate, he'd be out of water by evening. Then dehydration would kill him faster than the leg injury. He needed to find water, or slow his consumption, or both. Cole remembered his survival training from 20 years ago. Desert water sources, morning dew on rocks, barrel cactus, dry creek beds where water might pool underground. He scanned the landscape. Nothing that looked promising, just endless desert. He checked his leg. The bandage was soaked through with blood. Not spurting, but seeping steadily. The wound needed to be cleaned and redressed, but he couldn't waste water on that. Infection would take days to kill him. Dehydration would take hours. His hands were already raw. The skin on his palms had blistered and torn. He wrapped strips of his undershirt around them to provide some protection. It helped marginally. The tower beacon flashed in the distance, still impossibly far. He'd been crawling for hours and it didn't look any closer. Cole did the math. Half a mile in 3 hours. That's 0.16 miles per hour. 40 miles at that pace would take 250 hours. 10 days. He had maybe 1 day of water left, 2 days before dehydration killed him, 3 before infection turned septic. The numbers didn't work. He needed to move faster, but his body was already failing. His arms shook with every push. His right leg was cramping from overuse. The broken leg was a dead anchor dragging behind him. Emma's wedding was in 6 days and 20 hours. Cole thought about quitting, just lying here in the shade until unconsciousness took him. It would be easier. The pain would stop. But then he thought about Emma walking down the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no one to dance with at the reception. He'd promised Sarah. Cole crawled out from under the shade. The afternoon heat was murderous. Cole's internal temperature was climbing. He could feel it. Dizziness, nausea, the early signs of heat exhaustion moving toward heat stroke. If his core temperature hit 106 degrees, his organs would start shutting down. Game over. He needed to stop moving during peak heat. Survival 101. Travel at dawn and dusk. Shelter during midday. But stopping meant losing time. Losing ground. He'd already calculated the math. It didn't work. Cole kept crawling. Around 2 in the afternoon, he saw something that made him stop. A cluster of prickly pear cactus about 50 yards to his right. The pads were thick and green. Desert survival training came back. Prickly pear held moisture. Not much, but something. 50 yards off course. 100 yards round trip. An hour of crawling. Maybe 2 in his condition. But water was water. He angled toward the cactus. The detour took 90 minutes. When he reached the prickly pear, his hands were bleeding again despite the wrappings. His right leg was cramping so badly he could barely push. But he was here. Cole pulled out his knife and carefully cut into one of the thick pads. He peeled back the outer skin, avoiding the spines. Inside was pale green flesh, slightly moist. He cut a piece and put it in his mouth. It was bitter and barely wet, but it was something. He ate 3 more pieces, feeling the minimal moisture coat his throat. Not enough to survive on, but enough to extend his water supply maybe a few hours. He cut several more pads and wrapped them in strips of parachute fabric, put them in his pocket. Emergency rations. The sun was starting its descent, maybe 4 in the afternoon. The temperature was still above 110, but the worst had passed. Cole oriented himself using the tower beacon and started crawling northeast again. His body was breaking down systematically. Both hands shredded. Right leg cramping, left leg dead weight. Core temperature too high, dehydration advancing, blood loss continuing. The splint was holding, but the wound was definitely infected. He could smell it now. That sweet, sick smell of bacteria eating dead tissue. Cole allowed himself to think about the wedding. Emma had shown him pictures of her dress. White lace off the shoulder. She'd look beautiful. Sarah would have cried. Cole would probably cry too if he made it there. David was a good man, structural engineer, stable job, treated Emma right. Cole had given his blessing 6 months ago over dinner. David had been nervous, formal. "Sir, I'd like to ask for Emma's hand in marriage." Cole had made him sweat for about 30 seconds before saying yes. The memory made him smile despite the pain. As the sun dropped lower, Cole's progress improved slightly. The cooler air helped. His muscles responded better. He managed maybe 100 yards per hour instead of 50. Still pathetically slow. Still not enough. But something. By 6 in the evening, he'd covered another mile. Total distance. Maybe 2 miles from the crash site. 38 miles remaining. His water bottle was empty. Cole shook it, hoping for a few drops. Nothing. He'd consumed 1 liter in 8 hours. Now he had no water, no shade, and the sun was setting. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. This journey took days to unfold. If you're invested, hit subscribe. It means everything. Now back to Cole. Night fell fast in the desert. One moment the sun was touching the horizon, the next it was gone, and the temperature was dropping. Cole kept crawling. The cooler air was a blessing. His core temperature came down. His mind cleared slightly, but his tongue was swelling. His lips were cracked and bleeding. Severe dehydration was setting in. He needed water. Tonight, or tomorrow, would be his last day. Cole navigated by the stars. He taught Emma the constellations when she was 8. They'd gone camping in the mountains, just the two of them. Sarah had packed them sandwiches and sleeping bags. Emma had been fascinated by the night sky. "That's Polaris, honey. The North Star. You can always find your way home with that star." Now he used it to keep heading northeast, toward the tower, toward Emma. The terrain changed around 9 at night. The hard ground gave way to a shallow wash, maybe 10 feet wide. Cole stopped and examined it in the moonlight. Old water channel. Probably ran hard during the rare desert storms. Now it was bone dry. But dry washes sometimes had water underneath. If the sand was deep enough, moisture could pool below the surface. Cole found a spot where the sand looked softer. He dug with his hands, scooping out sand. 6 inches deep, 12 inches, 18. His hands hit something solid. Rock, no water. He tried another spot. Dug down 2 feet, nothing but dry sand. Third spot, 3 feet down. The sand felt slightly cooler, damper. He kept digging. 4 feet. His hand touched moisture. Not water exactly, but wet sand. He squeezed a handful. A few drops came out. Cole dug faster, widening the hole. He pulled out the empty water bottle and pressed it into the wet sand at the bottom of the hole. Let it sit for 5 minutes. When he pulled it out, maybe 2 ounces of muddy water had seeped in. It was brown, probably contaminated with bacteria, definitely filled with sediment. Drinking it might make him sick, but not drinking meant certain death. Cole drank the muddy water. It tasted like dirt and minerals. His stomach cramped immediately, but he kept it down. He waited 30 minutes, let more water seep into the bottle and drank again. 4 ounces total. Not nearly enough, but something. He stayed by the hole until midnight, collecting water drop by drop. By the time he moved on, he'd consumed maybe 12 ounces of contaminated water. His stomach was in rebellion, cramping, nauseous. But he was hydrated enough to continue. The tower beacon kept flashing. 30 seconds. Flash. 30 seconds. Flash. His metronome. His guide. His hope. Cole crawled through the night. The moon was 3/4 full, providing enough light to see the ground. He made good progress in the cool darkness. Maybe 200 yards per hour. His best pace yet. Around 2 in the morning, he started hallucinating. Mild at first. Shadows that moved wrong. Sounds that weren't there. Then he saw Emma walking beside him in her wedding dress. "Dad, you're going to make it," she said. I know, honey. You promised. I always keep my promises. Emma smiled and vanished. Cole kept crawling. Dawn arrived cold. Cole had crawled through the entire night without stopping. His body was running on something beyond adrenaline, beyond willpower, some primal survival mechanism that refused to accept death. He'd covered maybe 3 more miles during the night. 5 miles total from the crash site, 35 miles remaining. The math was still impossible, but slightly less impossible. Emma's wedding was in 6 days. The contaminated water hit his system hard around sunrise. Violent cramps doubled him over. He vomited brown liquid onto the sand. His body was rejecting the bacteria-filled water, purging his system. He lost what little hydration he'd gained. Cole lay in the dirt, shaking. This was bad. The contaminated water might kill him faster than no water at all. His stomach felt like someone was twisting it with pliers. He dry heaved twice more, bringing up nothing but bile. When the cramps finally subsided, he forced himself to assess the situation objectively. He needed clean water. The prickly pear cactus provided minimal moisture, but not enough. The seep water was contaminated. He was dying of thirst in slow motion. His leg was worse. The infection had spread. Red streaks ran up his thigh toward his hip. The wound smelled like rotting meat. Sepsis was starting. He had maybe 2 days before the infection became systemic and killed him. 2 days to cover 35 miles with a destroyed leg, no water, and advancing sepsis. Cole laughed. It came out as a croak. The situation was absurd, impossible. He should be dead already, but he wasn't dead yet. He pulled out the signal mirror and checked his bearing. The tower was definitely closer. He could make out individual structures now, maybe see vehicles moving. Still impossibly far, but closer. The sun climbed higher, temperature rising fast. Cole knew he couldn't move during peak heat, not without water. He needed shelter. He scanned the terrain and spotted an outcropping of rocks about 200 yards away. Real shade, not just a scraggly bush. The crawl to the rocks took an hour. When he reached them, he found a small overhang that provided actual shadow. He pulled out the emergency blanket and draped it across the opening, creating a reflective barrier. The temperature inside his makeshift shelter dropped to maybe 95 degrees. Still hot, but survivable. Cole examined his hands. The skin was completely gone from his palms, raw meat wrapped in dirty cloth. He unwrapped them and used the last of his antiseptic from the first aid kit. It burned like fire, but he didn't care. Infection in his hands would end this as surely as infection in his leg. He rewrapped his hands with fresh strips from his flight suit. Running out of fabric, running out of supplies, running out of time. His watch said 8 in the morning. The heat would peak around 2, 6 hours to rest. Then he'd move again at dusk. If he could find water today, he might survive another night, might make another 5 miles. Cole closed his eyes. He needed sleep. His body was shutting down from exhaustion. Just an hour, maybe 2. He dreamed of Emma's wedding. He was standing at the altar in his dress uniform. Emma was walking toward him down the aisle. She was crying, happy tears. Sarah was there too, sitting in the front row, smiling. "You made it," Sarah said. "I promised." Cole woke up screaming. His leg had shifted and the bone had ground against itself. The pain was transcendent, beyond anything he'd experienced. He bit down on his sleeve to keep from screaming again. When the pain subsided to merely excruciating, he checked his watch. Noon. 4 more hours until he could move. Cole spent the afternoon watching his leg die. The tissue below the knee had turned dark purple, almost black in places. The smell was overwhelming, even in the open air. Gangrene. The infection had killed the lower leg completely. Dead tissue was poisoning his blood, spreading toxins through his system. He knew what he had to do. The thought had been forming since dawn, but he'd been pushing it away. Now there was no choice. If he didn't remove the dead tissue, sepsis would kill him within 24 hours. The infection was already racing up his thigh. He could see the red streaks climbing toward his hip. Cut off the dead part or die. Simple math. Cole pulled out his knife. The blade was 4 inches long, serrated on one side. Sharp enough. He'd need to cut through skin, muscle, and tendon. The bone was already broken. He just needed to separate the dead section from the living. No anesthetic except the pain pills. He had 4 left in the bottle. He took all 4. Waited 30 minutes for them to hit. They barely touched the pain, but it was something. He unwrapped the splint and examined the break point. The bone had snapped clean about 6 inches above the knee. Below that point, everything was dead. Above it, the tissue was inflamed and infected, but still alive. That was the line. That's where he needed to cut. Cole positioned the knife. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from fever. His temperature had to be over 103. The infection was cooking him from inside. He thought about Emma, her 5th birthday, her high school graduation, the day she introduced him to David, her face when David proposed, all the moments that mattered, all the reasons to do this. Cole bit down on a strip of leather from his boot and started cutting. The pain was absolute. Even through 4 pain pills and shock and fever, it was the worst thing he'd ever felt. He screamed into the leather. Tears poured down his face, but he kept cutting, through skin, through muscle, through tendon. The bone was already separated from the break. He just needed to cut the soft tissue holding the 2 parts together. His vision went white, gray, almost black. He was going to pass out. No. Stay conscious. Finish this. One more cut. The dead section separated from his body. Cole threw it as far as he could. Then he poured the last of his antiseptic on the stump. The pain somehow got worse. He screamed again, and this time he did black out. When he came to, the sun had moved. An hour had passed. Maybe 2. He was lying in a pool of blood. Too much blood. He needed to stop the bleeding, or he'd die here. Cole wrapped the stump with the last of his bandages, tied them tight. The bleeding slowed. His leg ended 6 inches above where his knee used to be. The stump was crude and horrible, but it was clean. The dead tissue was gone. The infection couldn't spread from tissue that wasn't there anymore. He felt lighter, literally. Maybe 15 pounds lighter without the lower leg. Easier to drag, less weight to pull. The tower beacon flashed. 35 miles, 6 days until the wedding. Cole checked his watch. 4 in the afternoon, 2 more hours until he could move. He closed his eyes and waited for dusk. Cole started moving again at 6. The amputation had done something unexpected. Without the dead weight, he could move faster. His right leg pushed, his arms pulled. The stump just dragged behind, wrapped in bloody bandages. He covered 100 yards in 30 minutes, twice his previous pace. The fever was still there, but it wasn't getting worse. The infection had stabilized. Still present in his upper thigh, but not spreading. Removing the source had worked. He might actually survive the sepsis now. Might. Dehydration was the bigger threat. His tongue was thick in his mouth. His lips were cracked and bleeding. He hadn't urinated in 12 hours. Classic severe dehydration symptoms. His body was shutting down non-essential functions to preserve vital organs. He needed water. Real water. Not muddy seep water that would make him sicker. Cole crawled through the evening, making good time. The amputation had bought him speed. Maybe 300 yards per hour now. Still impossibly slow for the distance remaining, but better. Around 8 at night, he saw something that made him stop. A dirt road. Faint tire tracks in the sand. Old tracks, probably months old, but it was a road. Roads meant people, eventually. Cole altered course to follow the road northeast. Roads were easier terrain, packed dirt instead of loose sand. He could make even better time. The road followed the terrain naturally, winding between rock formations and around dry washes. Cole stuck to it. An hour later, he found something that felt like a miracle. A crushed aluminum can under a rock. He picked it up. Rainwater had collected inside. Maybe 3 ounces. It was stale and metallic, but it was clean water. Cole drank it in one long swallow. The moisture coating his throat felt like salvation. He kept the can. If he found more rocks, he could set it out to collect morning dew. Desert nights got cold. Moisture condensed on metal surfaces. It might yield a few ounces. The road continued northeast. The tower was visible now in the darkness, lights clearly marking the structure. Maybe 25 miles away. Still far, but no longer impossible. Cole had covered 15 miles in 2 days. 15 miles of hell, but he'd done it. Emma's wedding was in 5 days. The math was starting to work. If he could maintain his current pace, 300 yards per hour for 8 hours per night, he could cover maybe 5 miles per day. 5 days meant 25 miles. He might actually make it. The thought gave him energy. He pushed harder, crawled faster. The road made everything easier. His hands found purchase, his leg found traction. The stump left a blood trail behind him, but he was moving. Around midnight, Cole found the second miracle of the night, an old tarp wedged under a rock outcropping. Someone had used this spot as shelter once. The tarp was torn and sun-damaged, but still functional. He pulled it out and examined it. Maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. Blue plastic, faded to gray. He could use this, create better shade during the day, collect dew at night. It was the most valuable thing he'd found since the crash. Cole wrapped the tarp around his shoulders and kept moving. The night was cold now, temperature in the 50s. The tarp provided warmth, another unexpected benefit. Dawn on day 3 found Cole 6 miles from the crash site. He'd pushed through the entire night, refusing to stop. The road had made the difference. Smooth terrain, clear path. He'd covered almost 4 miles in the darkness, 29 miles to the tower. 4 days until the wedding. The numbers were working now, really working. If he could maintain this pace, he'd reach the tower in time. Barely, but possible. Cole set up the tarp as a sun shelter, propping it against rocks to create shade. He placed the aluminum can on a flat rock nearby to collect dew. The morning air was cool enough that moisture might condense. Every drop counted. His body was a catalog of destruction. Both hands were raw hamburger meat. His right leg was cramping constantly from overuse. The stump was infected again despite the amputation. His lips were split and bleeding. His skin was burned and dehydrated. He'd lost maybe 30 pounds. His flight suit hung loose on his frame. But he was alive, still moving, still fighting. Cole allowed himself to rest during the morning heat. He needed to conserve energy. The fever was back, climbing steadily. The infection in his thigh wasn't done with him yet. Red streaks were visible again, reaching toward his hip. The amputation had slowed the spread but not stopped it. He had maybe 3 days before septic shock killed him. 3 days to cover 29 miles. Around noon, Cole heard something that made his heart race. A helicopter. Distant but unmistakable. The rhythmic thump of rotors. Search and rescue. He scrambled out from under the tarp and pulled out the signal mirror. Angled it toward the sound. Flashed it repeatedly. The helicopter was maybe 5 miles away, moving parallel to his position. "Here, I'm here." Cole pulled out the flare gun. He had 3 flares. He'd been saving them. Now seemed like the time. He fired one straight up. The flare arced into the sky, burning bright red against the blue. The helicopter continued on its path. Didn't change course. Didn't alter altitude. They hadn't seen him. Cole fired a second flare. This one climbed higher, trailing smoke. The helicopter was further away now, maybe 8 miles. Still moving away. "Please, please see me." The helicopter disappeared over a ridge. The sound faded. Gone. Cole collapsed. He'd wasted 2 flares, 2 of his 3 signals. For nothing. They'd been so close. 5 miles. He could have fired a flare earlier. Could have been more visible. Could have done something different. But they were searching the wrong grid. His crash site was 15 miles from where anyone expected. The search pattern wouldn't bring them back this way. They'd already cleared this sector. They thought he was somewhere else. No one was coming. Cole had known this intellectually, but some part of him had been hoping, believing that rescue would arrive, that he'd just need to survive long enough for the helicopters to find him. Now that hope was dead, he was alone, completely alone. If he was going to reach that tower, he'd have to do it himself. Emma's wedding was in 4 days, 12 hours. Cole checked the aluminum can. 2 ounces of dew had collected. He drank it. Then he ate the last of the prickly pear pads he'd been carrying. The moisture was minimal, but better than nothing. He lay back under the tarp and stared at the fabric. The helicopter had crushed something in him. Not his will to survive. Something else. Hope, maybe. The belief that help existed. Cole didn't move when the sun set. He lay under the tarp and let darkness come. The fever was worse. His body was shaking despite the heat. The infection had won. It was spreading faster now, red streaks climbing past his hip toward his abdomen. Once it reached his core organs, he'd have hours at most. Emma's wedding was in 4 days. He had maybe 2 days to live. The math didn't work anymore. He thought about Sarah, her last days in the hospital, the morphine drip barely touching the pain. Emma had sat beside her mother's bed for 72 hours straight. Cole had tried to get her to rest, to eat, to step outside for air. Emma had refused. "I'm not leaving her, Dad. She didn't leave me when I needed her. I'm not leaving now." Sarah had died holding Emma's hand. Her last words were, "Take care of our girl." Cole had promised. He'd looked Sarah in the eyes and promised he'd be there for Emma. Every milestone, every moment that mattered, he'd be there. Now he was going to break that promise, die in the desert 25 miles from help. Emma would walk down the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no one to dance with at the reception. She'd bury 2 parents before she turned 24. Cole started crying, first time since the crash. He'd been so focused on survival, on moving forward, on keeping the promise. He hadn't let himself feel the reality. Now it hit him. He was dying, alone, in the middle of nowhere, and there was nothing he could do about it. He cried until there were no tears left. His body was too dehydrated to produce them. Then he heard Sarah's voice, clear as day, not a hallucination, not fever dreams. Her voice. "Get up, Cole." "I can't. I'm done." "You promised me. Get up." "Sarah, I tried. I crawled 20 miles with one leg. I cut off my own leg. I tried everything. And you're going to quit now, 25 miles from Emma. That's not the man I married." Cole opened his eyes. Sarah wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. But her voice was right. He'd crawled 20 miles. 20 miles of impossible. What was 25 more? He was going to die anyway. Might as well die moving toward Emma. Cole dragged himself out from under the tarp. The night was cold and clear. Stars filled the sky. The tower beacon flashed in the distance. 25 miles, might as well be 25,000. His body was shutting down. The infection was winning. He could barely move. He started crawling anyway. Push, pull, drag, breathe. Push, pull, drag, breathe. The fever made everything unreal. The stars were too bright. The ground moved wrong. He saw Sarah walking beside him, then Emma, then both of them. They were talking to him, but he couldn't understand the words. He crawled through hallucinations, through delirium, through pain that had transcended into something beyond pain. His body was a machine, and the machine only knew forward. Around midnight, he found water, real water, an old plastic bottle half buried in sand beside the road. Someone had thrown it from a vehicle. It still had maybe 8 ounces of water inside, probably months old, warm and plastic tasting. Cole drank it like it was champagne. The water cleared his head slightly, enough to realize he'd covered maybe 2 miles since sunset, 23 miles remaining. 4 days until the wedding, still possible. Barely, but possible. He kept crawling. Day 4 arrived with Cole barely conscious. He'd crawled another 3 miles through the night, 10 miles from the crash site, 20 miles from the tower. His body was beyond exhausted, beyond damaged. He was functioning on something that wasn't quite human anymore. The infection had stabilized again. Not better, but not worse. His body had reached some terrible equilibrium with the bacteria trying to kill him. The fever remained constant at 103 degrees, high enough to cause delirium but not high enough to shut down his organs. Yet, Emma's wedding was in 3 days. Cole did the math. 20 miles in 3 days meant averaging 7 miles per day. He'd been averaging maybe 4. He needed to move faster, but faster wasn't possible. His body had nothing left. The road continued northeast, following the natural terrain. Around noon, Cole found something that changed everything. A highway marker, faded and weathered, but readable. Nellis Range Road, Tower 7, 15 miles. 15 miles, not 20. 15. He'd miscalculated the distance. The tower was closer than he thought. 15 miles in 3 days was 5 miles per day. He'd already been doing 4. 5 was possible, barely possible, but possible. Cole laughed. It came out as a croak. 15 miles. He'd already come 25. What was 15 more? He kept crawling. The afternoon heat was brutal. 112 degrees. Cole rigged the tarp over some rocks and collapsed underneath. He needed to rest, needed to let his body recover as much as it could, which wasn't much. He examined his stump. The infection was bad but controlled. The bandages were crusted with dried blood and pus. He should change them, but he'd run out of clean fabric days ago. The wound would have to stay wrapped in dirty cloth. His hands were the worst. No skin left on the palms, just raw tissue wrapped in blood-soaked rags. Every push forward was agony, but the pain had become background noise, constant and irrelevant. Around 4 in the afternoon, Cole heard vehicles, real vehicles, engines on the distant road. He scrambled out from under the tarp and looked. Maybe 2 miles away, a convoy of trucks moving along what looked like a paved road. Military vehicles, probably heading to the tower. He was close, so close, 2 miles from a real road with real traffic. Cole started crawling toward the vehicles. The terrain was rough between the dirt road and the paved highway, rocks and sand and scattered brush. It didn't matter. He crawled anyway. An hour later, he'd covered maybe half a mile. The vehicles were long gone. But now he could see the paved road clearly, black asphalt shimmering in the heat. Maybe a mile away. If he could reach that road, someone would see him, eventually. Traffic must pass by, not often, but sometimes. He just needed to reach the pavement. Cole pushed harder, ignored the pain, ignored the exhaustion, ignored the voice in his head saying he was killing himself with the effort. He crawled toward the highway like it was the finish line. By sunset, he was 300 yards from the pavement, close enough to see the road markings, close enough to hear the occasional vehicle pass by. But his body quit, just stopped. His arms wouldn't push anymore. His leg wouldn't respond. He tried to move and nothing happened. Complete system failure. Cole lay in the dirt and watched the sun set. The tower was maybe 12 miles away now, visible against the darkening sky. Lights coming on, so close, but he couldn't move. Cole lay paralyzed in the desert twilight. His muscles had simply stopped responding. He could think, could breathe, could move his head slightly. But his arms and legs were done. 4 days of crawling had destroyed them. The infection, dehydration, and exhaustion had finally won. 300 yards from the highway, 12 miles from the tower. 2 days until Emma's wedding. He'd come so far, 27 miles of impossible, and he was going to die 300 yards short. A vehicle passed on the highway, headlights sweeping across the desert. Cole tried to raise his arm to wave. Nothing. His arm stayed flat on the ground. He tried to yell. His voice came out as a whisper. The vehicle passed without slowing. The stars came out. The temperature dropped. Cole started shivering. His body temperature was dysregulating. The fever made him hot, but his extremities were cold. Classic shock symptoms. His body was shutting down non-essential systems to protect vital organs. He thought about Emma, probably at home right now, finalizing last-minute wedding details. She thought her father was dead. The Air Force would have held a memorial service by now. Emma would have cried through it. David would have held her. Everyone would have said nice things about Lieutenant Colonel Cole Mercer. "I'm sorry, Em," Cole whispered to the stars. "I tried. I really tried." Cole still had one flare left. If he fired it when a vehicle approached, they'd have to see it. 300 yards was nothing. The flare would be visible for miles. He just needed to stay alive until morning. Stay conscious. Stay ready. The temperature kept dropping. Cole's shivering got worse. The tarp was somewhere behind him, maybe 50 yards back. Might as well be 50 miles. He couldn't reach it. His body heat was leaking into the cold desert sand. He needed insulation, needed warmth, needed something between him and the ground. Cole used the last of his strength to roll onto his side. Then he scooped sand with his ruined hands, covered his legs, his torso, buried himself in a shallow layer of sand. The sand held residual heat from the day. Not much, but something. It might keep him alive until dawn. He lay there half buried in sand, staring at the highway, waiting for headlights, waiting for his chance. Emma's wedding was in 48 hours. He'd be there, or he'd die trying. Those were still the only two options. Dawn came slowly. Cole had survived the night through sheer stubbornness. His body temperature had dropped dangerously low, but the sand had kept him from complete hypothermia. When the sun finally rose, he was still breathing, still conscious, still waiting. Two vehicles passed at sunrise, both too far away for his whisper of a voice to reach. He had the flare gun in his hand, but he couldn't raise his arm to fire it. His muscles refused. He watched both vehicles disappear down the highway. Emma's wedding was tomorrow, 36 hours. Around 7 in the morning, Cole heard another engine. Closer this time, a truck moving slow. He could hear gravel crunching, not on the highway, on the dirt road behind him, coming from the direction he'd crawled from. Border Patrol. Had to be. They ran routes through this sector, checking for illegal crossings, monitoring the range boundaries. The truck was maybe 200 yards away and getting closer. Cole tried to yell. His voice came out as a rasp. Tried to move. His body stayed still. The flare gun was in his right hand, but his arm was pinned under him in the sand. He couldn't reach the trigger. The truck was 100 yards away now. He could see it. White Ford Ranger with official markings. 2 men in the cab. "Here," Cole whispered. "I'm here." 50 yards. The truck was going to pass right by him, maybe 20 feet away. They'd never see him lying in the sand, half buried and motionless. Cole focused everything he had on his right arm. Move. Just move. Lift the flare gun. Fire it. That's all. One simple action. His arm twitched, barely, but movement. The truck was 30 yards away. Cole screamed inside his mind, commanding his arm to move, demanding it. His fingers closed on the flare gun grip. His arm shifted in the sand, lifted an inch, 2 inches, 20 yards. He pulled the trigger. The flare launched with a pop and a hiss. Shot up maybe 15 feet before the parachute deployed. Bright red smoke trailing, impossible to miss. The truck stopped hard, brakes squealing, both doors opened. 2 men jumped out, running toward him. "Holy shit, we got a survivor. Call it in." Hands on him, checking his pulse, his breathing. One man was on a radio. "This is Patrol 7. We have a downed pilot, severe injuries, requesting immediate medevac." "Sir, can you hear me? Sir." Cole tried to speak. His voice barely worked. "Wedding? Tomorrow. Emma." What's he saying? Something about a wedding. He's delirious. "Get the medical kit. This guy's in bad shape." They wrapped him in thermal blankets, started an IV. One of them saw the stump and swore. "Jesus Christ, he amputated his own leg. How long has he been out here?" 4 days, Cole whispered. "Crawled. 27 miles. The 2 men looked at each other. One of them keyed his radio. "Dispatch. Survivor says he's been down for 4 days. That's the F-16 collision from Monday. This is Cole Mercer." The radio crackled back. "Mercer, he was declared KIA. Memorial service was yesterday." "Well, he's not KIA. He's right here, and he's alive." The helicopter arrived 20 minutes later. Medical team jumped out. They stabilized Cole's vitals, secured his stump, pumped him full of antibiotics and fluids. The lead medic kept shaking his head. "Your vitals should be incompatible with consciousness. How are you even alive?" "Wedding," Cole said. "Tomorrow. Emma." "Sir, you're going to the hospital. You've got severe sepsis, dehydration, hypothermia." "No, wedding. Promised." They loaded him into the helicopter. As it lifted off, Cole looked down at the desert. 27 miles of hell stretched behind him, a trail of blood and determination. He'd made it. Barely, but he'd made it. Emma's wedding was in 34 hours. He was going to be there. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for tomorrow's story. Thank you for watching. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.